Welcome to our 10-minute review on the peripheral nervous system. So we looked at the peripheral nervous system and we started by looking at the general senses. For the general senses, it is generally touch, pain, and temperature. Now, the receptors for the general senses tend to be two things. They tend to be either free nerve endings, which is for pain and temperature. There's actually different types of temperature. Or they're encapsulated corpuscles, like the Pacinian corpuscle we saw, the Meissner's corpuscle, the Krauss end bulb, that's in your nose. It tells you there's a booger in your nose. So that's touch. So on the test, I'm going to ask you what type of nerve ending is pain, free, temperature, free, touch, encapsulated, period. Now, the peripheral nervous system is everything outside the central nervous system. It is nerves. So this is a nerve. We have our sensory neurons going in, we have our spinal nerves going out. We have ganglia and we have receptors. So this peripheral nervous system is everything outside. And the way in is we generally have sensory neurons coming in on afferent neurons, see our unipolar neuron, and they meet up with integration neurons in the central nervous system. In this case, it's the spine. Then motor neurons come out, period. We then looked at the 12 cranial nerves. Now, a nerve is a bundle of myelinated axons outside the central nervous system. Now, when they did that, they didn't realize olfactory and optic are actually part of the central nervous system. So they get called nerves. So there's 12 cranial nerves. You need to know for the lecture exam, they are numbered from rostral, it's towards the nose, to caudal, 1 to 12. And I'm going to go over them in a lab activity. I went over them in lecture, but you need to know which ones are sense only, which ones are motor only, and which ones are mixed nerves. So something like the accessory is motor only, something like the olfactory is sense only, and then the facial does everything. Now, there's a lot of mnemonics out there to help you memorize the order. I'm not going to show them to you because some of them are rated R. However, this one I found, doing something completely different, is how to remember sensory, motor, both. So that's something I found and thought it was neat. Now, there are 31 spinal nerves. You have to know that. And you have to know there's 8 cervical, even though there's only 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic, 1 for each one vertebrae, 5 lumbar, 1 for each vertebrae, 5 thoracic, and then coccygeal, 1 is not on this picture. C1 to C7 are exiting above their cervical vertebrae. So atlas exits above, C2 axis exits above. C7, that's C7 vertebrae, that's C7 nerve. C8 is going to break the pattern. It exits below the 7th cervical vertebrae. And then all the rest of the nerves are named for the vertebrae they exit below. So T1 exits below T1, T4 exits below T4, T10 exits below T10, L4 exits before L4, etc. So we talked about the spine in the last chapter, how we have the cell bodies in the gray matter, and the axons are going to leave from the anterior surface of motor neurons on the anterior root. The axons of sensory neurons are going to go through this posterior root. Their cell bodies are in this posterior root ganglia, and they hook up right here. So this is going to form a spinal nerve. It has both sensory and motor. Now, the thing is it branches right there. That's a ramus. That's the posterior ramus. This is the anterior ramus, and it's going to give off this weird structure, which we'll talk about in the next chapter, which is the sympathetic chain. So again, here's our gray matter. We have cell bodies of motor neurons there, and their axons are going to go out and into the world. We have over here, we have our sensory neurons, and there's our cell body. And it's going to go into the posterior horn where there's integration neuron cell bodies. And the sense signal is either going to go up posterior tracts in the posterior white matter or just go there and complete a reflex. Now, right here, what's going to happen is it splits. And so we have one split that's going to go to the back, and it's very pathetic. That is the posterior ramus. we're going to have another split that is going to go towards the front, and this is going to be the anterior ramus. It's going to form the intercostal nerves. It forms all the plexes, and it's going to actually have communicating rami coming off of it going to the sympathetic trunk. So spinal cord, posterior root, anterior root. There's going to be a ganglia there. It's going to form the spinal nerve that quickly splits into a posterior and an anterior rami. Period. So the plexuses all form from the anterior rami, and you have the cervical plexus, which is going to go to the neck. You need to know it's C1 through C5. C5 is going to double up. Now the hypoglossal nerve is going to come and hook up with it. And you have to know the most important nerve that comes off of it. It's the phrenic nerve, because that goes to the diaphragm and helps you breathe. The cervical plexus is going to be C5 through T1. I mean, the brachial plexus is C5 to T1. And that's going to go to the arms. The sacral plexus is going to be the sacral sacral nerves right here, S1 to S4, not S5. And actually, L4 and L5 actually hook up with it too. So there's L4, L5. The lumbar plexus is going to be L1 to L4. And see, L4 doubles up. So here's the sacral plexus, so L4 to L5. So we'll look at all the plexuses in lab, but I want to draw the brachial plexus for you since I have 4 minutes. So we have nerve roots C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. So those are the roots. And I'm going to make you label this on complete anatomy. It might help you if you draw it too. But here is the 3 trunks. We have superior, middle, and inferior. They all have a posterior division. And this is going to make the posterior cord. And the posterior cord is going to give off the radial nerve, guess which side that's on, and the axillary nerve. The anterior division of the middle and superior trunk are going to get together and make the lateral cord, while the anterior division of the inferior trunk is going to make the medial cord. So these two are going to be like, we miss each other. Actually, most of those fibers never even met each other. So they're going to get together, and they're going to form the median nerve. You have the other branch of this forming the ulnar nerve. And then we have a little tiny branch coming off of that one called the musculocutaneous nerve. So this has been my drawing with my mouse. I suggest you draw it once or 100 times to help you with it. But again, we're going to look at all the cranial nerves in lab, or we're going to look at all the plexuses in lab. So I'm not that concerned right now, but I just wanted to go over the parts of this plexus. So that was our peripheral nervous system lecture in 9 minutes. Again, if go over, we have tutoring. Thank you. Have a good day.